Hello again. So this micro lecture is on what mass isn't. So we're going to compare it to two things and hopefully get a sense of what it is by talking about what it isn't. As always, 3 or more bullet points worth of notes, 1 to 2 sentence summary, and your follow-up questions on Google Forms. So mass. Last time we talked about this idea that mass measures how much stuff is in an object, or in a more scientific way, how much matter is in the object. So here we've got a rock with significantly more rock there, or significantly more matter there, versus a small rock, not a boulder, and it has a lot less there, so there's less stuff in it. Now, if we're comparing these, we might be tempted to think that mass would be kind of size, or like how big it is. And although sometimes those two things are related, when it's the same material, that works. But when it's different materials, then we find that sometimes something can be bigger, like take up more space, but it's not nearly as massive or as hefty. And I'm purposely not saying as heavy, but I'm saying hefty because we're going to actually compare mass to weight later on. So in this case, this brings us to our first point, which is mass is not volume. Mass is how much matter is in something, and volume is how much space it takes up, like physically occupies. So to help differentiate, I've got a few examples. First, a small mass would be something like a feather. It doesn't have a whole lot of stuff there, and so it really is really easy to push and move, and so that's how we know it has a low mass. If we then talk about a gold bar isn't very easy to move compared to a feather, so it has a large mass compared to this feather. Or in other words, there's a lot of stuff there compared to the feather. If instead we wanted to compare volume, we could look at, again, this small feather. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but if we look at a larger balloon, it takes up a significantly larger amount of space. If we were to try and put balloons in a room, we couldn't fit nearly as many of these as we could feathers in a single room, because these each take up significantly more space. So that's what mass is versus volume. So let's do a quick little side-by-side comparison of everything. So feather, small mass, small volume, doesn't take up much space, and there's not a whole lot of stuff there to a feather. Gold bar, large mass, small volume, so it's not very big comparison to many other things, but there's a lot of heftiness to it. In other words, it's really hard to push and pull. If instead we looked at a large balloon, it's got a large volume but a very small mass. It takes up more space than this gold bar, but it's a whole lot easier to push that balloon around and to pull it around than it is to pull around a gold brick. If we wanted to look at something that was, let's say, a large mass and large volume, we could look at stacks of gold bricks. They take up, let's say, a whole warehouse of space, so it's a large volume, and it's also a very large mass because they're really hard to push and pull. So really, what you're looking at for volume is how much space does it take up, and what you're looking at for mass is how hard is it to push or pull. Volume is a variable of V. This is a capital V. It's usually measured in liters or milliliters or cubic centimeters or cubic meters are the other alternative. Mass has a lowercase m for its variable, and it's measured in kilograms or grams tend to be the usual measurements. And again, mass is not the same as volume. Now, we've talked a lot about things that seem very heavy and also said they're very massive, but I want to clarify that mass is not weight, and we're going to get into that a little bit further later on. So mass is how much stuff there is in something, and weight is something different. They're very much related, but they are not equal. That's it for now. 3 or more bullet points worth of notes, a 1 to 2 sentence summary, and do your follow-up questions on Google Forms. And our image credits, we've got a lot of them, so let's go ahead and show those. Here are the image credits for this lecture.